Hey, we're back with another week of pop politics.
My, what a week it has been.
2 weeks.
Yeah, I guess
It's been 2 weeks since we recorded. So we're just gonna jump right in. The first thing is that there's some new Han Solo spots for the movie, which is coming out at the end of May. And they look really good. Every time I see something new, I just get even more excited. Everything new coming out gets me just a little bit more excited for this movie, which is saying something because I didn't think we needed another Han Solo movie.
Are you done with the Han Solo thing?
Well, I was just gonna note that in the last trailer, there was a second Wookiee, so that's kind of exciting that we're getting to explore we kind of saw a little bit in Revenge of the Sith, but I feel like we don't really get to know all that much about Chewie, and so that's kind of fun to see him with another Wookiee, and Donald Glover is the perfect Lando Calrissian. That's all we're gonna say on that topic. So, you had another movie thing.
Did you see the trailer for Ocean's 8?
No.
Oh, it looks really good. So
really?
I'm a huge fan of all the Ocean's movie, 11, 12, 13. I think they're really great. I love, and Italian Job, I like those heist movies. This one's all female.
Right. Yeah.
It's
I've seen the posters.
Sandra Bullock, Cate Blanchett, Anne Hathaway, Helena Bonham Carter, Mindy Kaling, ton of great actresses. And the trailer came out, and it looks really good.
Yeah.
So, that also came out recently. I think it looks good. That's all I have to say on that.
Okay. So then last week, when I was at the height of my exhaustion, Heinz decided to release something that they called Mayo Chup, which is literally mayo and ketchup combined in one bottle. But Mayo Chup, first of all, is the worst name known to man. And second of all, literally, that's fry sauce. And Andalous sauce and whatever, I don't remember what they call it in Costa Rica. There's so many versions of this. Not Costa Rica, Colombia, and somewhere else, Puerto Rico maybe.
I don't know.
Anyway, so it's just literally this is a condiment that exists so many places and has so many other names that it's just really funny and sometimes a little bit variations. The Andalous sauce is tomato paste with mayo and peppers and but really this kind of product has existed for a really long time, and it just brought out the internet in forces against this choice, and now they're reconsidering their name decision, but I think they're still going forward with selling it. It's just funny that literally, I mean, mayo and ketchup is fry sauce. It was created in Utah. And then, I mean, there are other versions that were created elsewhere, but, what? I don't know. And it's one of those things that I kind of am why am I so upset about this? I don't quite understand why I'm so upset about this, but I am. So.
We just have those things that just grinds our gears, and we can't really explain why. Yeah. So I totally get you there.
I never would have picked that out. Somebody's ripping off fry sauce, so you're angry about it. I don't know.
All right, moving on. The next point we have is Scholastic is releasing new Harry Potter books for the 20th anniversary this year, and they are beautiful.
They really are.
So they are all black and white. And when Scholastic released one picture of them, so they can there's a picture of them that's just one continuous picture, and so they just all kind of flow one to another, and they are really, I think they're beautiful.
Yeah, they're quite pretty.
Go check them out. I just can't explain them. I can't do it justice.
It's got book specific art, but weaving throughout it all is this one central motif, so they blend into each other. It's really cool. And
it's interesting, Hermione is very prominently featured on the third book, Prisoner of Azkaban, with her time turner, and just things like that are interesting.
Yeah. That
they chose some content and style choices on that. So this is on the heels of the UK version had their 20th anniversary releases last year.
Those were the house versions of the books with the special content inside, and a little bit redesigned covers, but really it was just the crest. Yeah. So this is different.
But if you think about it, this is the Harry Potter books have so many covers now, because there's the original Scholastic ones, and there's the ones that they did a few years ago where all the spines come together and make Hogwarts, and now there's these ones. So there's
I'm sure somewhere someone has all of these, but the rest of us just look and go, that's very nice.
There's also, like, the audiobooks have different covers, and, like, the ebooks have a different cover.
Yeah, they do.
There's actually a guy called the Potter Collector.
Oh, yeah?
I heard about him on Mugglecast. He, like, collects all the different types of Harry Potter books and, like, there are in the world, like all the different language versions, and he has like this huge collection.
Oh my gosh.
He has a website, so if you're interested, go check out the Potter Collector.
That's interesting.
Moving on, this week the Pulitzer Prizes were announced, and if you don't know, the Pulitzer Prizes are like the Oscars for journalism. They are like the top award. They're the most prestigious, and they're awarded to print journalists and like art, or like they have like a journalism section and like a humanities section, which is like books and music, and like a drama section.
Yeah.
Notably, the Washington Post. No. The top one is for public service, and that one was the New York Times and the New Yorker shared it for like the Me Too and the Harvey Weinstein reporting, which is interesting. The Washington Post and the New York Times also won for their stories on the Russia stuff. What else was notable? I'm trying to think. They have a bunch of... So the New York Times won 3, the Washington Post won 2, I believe. What's interesting is on the humanities side, Kendrick Lamar won for the music category, which is a big deal because nobody outside of jazz and classical music has ever won the music category before.
Really?
And he is hip-hop. So it sent quite a shockwave through the...
Interesting.
Yeah, through the internet that he won the Pulitzer Prize for music. So congratulations to everyone there. Also, Time magazine came out with their list of like 100 most influential people, the Time 100. And it's interesting how they do it. They like have other celebrities and like people in that person's orbit write like a little tribute to them.
Yeah.
So some notable ones, like a few of the prominent Parkland students, Barack Obama wrote their tribute. Adele wrote one for Rihanna. Elton John wrote one for Prince Harry.
Ted Cruz wrote one for Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah, that one was interesting.
I haven't read it. Not sure I want to.
Who else is on there? Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle, the Carmen Yulin Cruz, the Puerto Rico mayor.
San Juan mayor, yep.
There's a woman in here who fights against FGM, which is female genital mutilation, which is a big deal in Africa. She is an advocate against that. You got a lot of country leaders on this list.
Just Justin Trudeau, Jacinda Ardern are both on there. London Mayor Sadiq Khan is included.
Moon Jae-in from South Korea.
Kim Jong-un.
I mean, literally, I don't see a major country leader that's not on this list as I'm scrolling through. Oh, wait, that's not true. Germany.
Oh, yeah. Angela Merkel's on there. I don't think Theresa May's on there either.
No, I didn't see
Emmanuel Macron is on there. Xi Jinping is on there. So, it's quite an interesting read, and all the blurbs are interesting. So, if you want, like, if you're curious,
there are 100 of them. You could spend some time on here. Okay, so...
Moving on, in our Disney live-action remake update, we haven't had any for a while. I'm not sure this
isn't a remake, though.
Well, okay, it's a Disney live-action update. I kind of group this into, like, their remakes and things. So, Disney is making a live-action movie based on the Disneyland ride Jungle Cruise, which nobody, like... You don't hear about the ride. It's not Space Mountain.
No.
It's not Splash Mountain. It's not the Teacups. It's not Matterhorn. Like, don't...
I can't even remember
You don't hear about this ride. So I'm confused, like, why they're going on with this. But they've cast some people. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emily Blunt are both attached to star in it.
The thing that I don't get about this is, like, it makes sense to make Pirates of the Caribbean into a movie. This one doesn't make sense.
Well, they did Pirates, they also did Haunted Mansion, and now they're doing this. So they have done a few movies based on the rides.
Right, but, like, Pirates and Haunted Mansion are, like...
They're notable rides.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
They made a Tomorrowland movie, just partly based on the section of Disneyland called Tomorrowland.
That's now gone.
Oh yeah, because Star Wars Land is.
Well, I think it was gone before.
Isn't Star Wars Land taken?
It is where that was.
Oh, that's really.
But I think it was gone before Star Wars Land.
That makes me really sad. I have this thing about preserve the traditional rides and keep, because they, like, Space Mountain was like Star Wars themed for a while, and it was like, no, like, you're building a whole Star Wars land, like, leave the rides alone. And, like, Tower of Terror is now, like, Guardians of the Galaxy themed. It's, like, Mission Breakout. And I'm like, no, like, Tower of Terror, like, was so iconic, had its own theme. Like, leave the classic rides alone. You can build new lands, build new rides, but leave the classic rides alone.
Fair.
Sorry, I got on a little soapbox there. Okay, moving on, and this is kind of a segue into politics. So a little update on the royal wedding of Harry and Meghan. So it came out, there had been tons of speculation, like, was Trump going to be invited? Were the Obamas going to be invited?
If they invited the Obamas, would they have to invite Trump?
How was that all going to go over? Was it going to be this big diplomatic headache for the UK? So, finally they came out with a statement that said that they decided that this wasn't an official diplomatic event, and so they're not inviting heads of government. Not even the British Prime Minister is invited. So that's a big deal. Like, I feel like they kind of had to do that.
Yeah, like, if you're not going to invite one, you can't invite anyone.
Yeah, so they just went with none, and they're just focusing on people who know the couple.
Yeah.
And I've heard some speculation rumors that some world leaders might go, like, in their personal capacity, like Justin Trudeau, because Meghan Markle has lived in Canada for the last few years. Stuff like that. But I'm really surprised, though, that, like, not even Theresa May is getting an invite, because, I mean, she's the British Prime Minister, like...
I'm kind of unsurprised, though. I don't think that the royal family and Theresa May are on super good terms.
You don't? Why not?
I'd be surprised, but... Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't have any facts to back that up.
That's the first I've heard of this, so that's interesting.
That's not a factual thing. That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
I think I just think that there are enough people upset with her in Britain they, you know, like, there's such a political turmoil with the whole Brexit thing that, like, I'm not sure that Theresa May is in the best, like, standing with the rest of
I have not heard of any rifts between her and the royal family, so that's interesting.
So, I'm not sure that that's exactly, like, there might not be rifts there, but there might be other considerations. I don't know, though. I know nothing, and this is how gossip gets started.
Right.
And fake news.
It's true. But it's interesting that they're not having, like, official government invitees.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But there was an interesting thing in that statement about the Obamas that said they weren't invited, but Harry and Meghan look forward to meeting them at a future date. So they are going to meet with the Obamas sometime, just they're not invited to the wedding. That was interesting.
I don't know. If I were the Obamas, I'd be like, that's one less trip I'd have to make right away. True.
But that set off speculation, like, are Harry and Meghan going to visit the U.S.? Or are the Obamas going to go there? Like, how are they going to meet? It just set off fresh new speculation. So, you never know. I love all of this stuff. I'm a huge fan of, like, British culture and, like, the royal family. I think, isn't that a word for, like, Anglophile, I think is...
Yeah, I think that's it.
Is that correct? I just love everything British. I'm currently watching Downton Abbey. And, like, I love The Crown, so I am just so into all of this stuff. So I hope you enjoy the little updates. Because I do. I follow it. Alright, that's a perfect segue into politics. The first thing was kind of a major announcement in any other normal news cycle, but we are not in normal news cycles. I kind of almost forgot that this happened, but...
Well, I had forgotten.
Speaker of the House Paul Ryan announced that he's not seeking re-election in November. And that's
But he will be Speaker until November, which means that the Speaker election is super long. Sorry, totally cut you off.
No, that's fine. But Paul Ryan has been one of the biggest fundraisers for House Republicans. He's raised millions of dollars, and so that's bringing up fresh questions about how will this do for Republicans' chances in the midterms. And I think they are totally valid and totally warranted, because if Paul Ryan's retiring, there was already a huge narrative about Republicans retiring this midterm, and then when you add the Speaker of the House on top of that, who, mind you, besides like the president and the vice president, he is the highest elected Republican, second in line for the presidency. Yep. Like, Speaker of the House is a huge position, and so that adds so much to the narrative that like Republicans are jumping ship ahead of the midterms, that they're afraid of a blue wave, they're afraid that they're not going to get reelected.
Well, and I think that afraid isn't just the only problem. I think that, like, that you are seeing that, like, I'd rather not be beat. I'd rather go out on my own terms. And that's not really fear so much as, like, I've done what I came here to do. Well, and that's the thing with Ryan, too, is that in some ways he's accomplished what he came to do, which was the tax bill. In
his defense, he has been in Congress for 20 years.
Yeah.
And he said he wanted to spend more time with his family.
He wanted to be more than a weekend dad.
Which is valid. That's all. Those are all valid reasons. But, I mean, it kind of helps you wonder, like, if there's other... Like, what else went into his decision.
Right. Well, and it sounded like, from what I was hearing, that he and his wife have this conversation every time the election rolls around, every 2 years. They have this discussion. Should I run again? Should we run again? Is that what we want to do? And usually they announce it pretty early on if he's going to run again, and they just hadn't said anything. So.
But there was some talk about, it's been difficult in the Trump era. Paul Ryan, if you remember, during the campaign, was not a big fan of Donald Trump. He even canceled appearances with him on the stump. Like, he and Trump...
Which kind of hurt him.
...did not get along well.
Yeah, he was booed at an event after he canceled on Trump. So...
He also called one of Trump's comments the textbook definition of racism. Yeah. I can't remember which comments those were, because...
It was about the...
the Mexican judge?
It was the Mexican judge.
Oh, the judge of Mexican heritage. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Mexican judge.
He called that the textbook definition of racism. So, like, him and Trump haven't had the most perfect relationship ever since Trump was elected. It seemed to have been on better footing.
A little bit,
They haven't as clashed as much, but, I mean, he's the president. So I'm sure in Ryan's point of view, he's like, well, I've got to work with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and in some ways, like, Trump kind of gave him a clean slate to, like, pass whatever legislation, because Trump said he'd sign whatever came across his plate. And so Ryan sees that as, like, well, we have, as Republicans, we have both sides of the Congress and a president, so let's get some legislation passed while we have this advantage. And even if I don't like the president, I have stuff I want to get done.
Also, Paul Ryan helped pass tax reform, which was, like, one of his big things. And so that's, like, he's been wanting to do that for a while, and that's kind of been his pet issue.
Yeah.
And so he can kind of go out on that, and it can be his legacy-defining issue. And
yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
In other Congress news.
Yeah, another Congress news. So Senator Tammy Duckworth announced a couple of months ago that she was pregnant. In the last 2 weeks, she's had the baby. Her name is Maylee, and she's very cute. And previously, Senate rules had said that there couldn't be babies on the floor during votes. And of course, like, this is one of those rules that they, like, made when it was all men in the Senate. And Tammy Duckworth has been the first woman who has been pregnant while in the Senate. And so now they needed to change some things. So they voted yesterday, the Senate did, to change the Senate rules almost unanimously so that babies could be present on the floor while they were voting. So today, Tammy Duckworth and Maylee rolled into the chamber to vote for the very first time. And Tammy Duckworth posted this really, really cute photo of, like, the outfit that Maylee was going to be wearing. So it was like this duckling onesie with a jacket, because there's also a Senate rule about how women have to wear blazers on the floor. So she was like, we're covering our bases. Like, she's wearing this little jacket. It was cute. Anyway, so they rolled in, she voted on the bill, and then they rolled out, and it was just really wonderful moment to see that we're progressing in some ways, in that, like, obviously we're going to run into this thing where women are in the Senate and have babies, and they still can govern. So, okay, next thing is Trump issued a pardon for Scooter Libby.
Oh, okay.
Who I, didn't even know who this was before Stu told me about him.
Yeah. Everybody had forgotten about Scooter Libby. So, Scooter Libby, this was a big deal at the end of the Bush administration. George W. Bush. So, do you remember the whole leaking of the CIA operative's name, Valerie Plame? Have you ever heard of Valerie Plame?
I'm pretty sure
it was like this big. This was like the Russia investigation of the Bush administration. Mm-hmm. Like, it was a huge story. People were caught up. Like, it was a big deal. Indictments came down and judgments came down. So there was a CIA operative whose name was leaked. Her identity, her name was Valerie Plame. And then there was a leak investigation, and Vice President Cheney's chief of staff, Scooter Libby, was indicted for perjury and those types of related charges. George W. Bush, President Bush, commuted his sentence. He was supposed to serve 33 months, 2.5 years in prison. He commuted his sentence, meaning he didn't have to go to prison.
Right.
I learned a lot about pardons versus commutations this week because of this. So he commuted his sentence, but he did not pardon him. So by commuting his sentence, he basically got him out of going to jail.
Right.
But he was still convicted criminal. Mm-hmm. So he still had to pay the fine, and his voting rights were taken away, and those things, when you're convicted of a crime, the judgment still stood on him. It was still on his record, but he didn't have to serve the prison time.
Yeah.
And apparently this was a big source of friction between Bush and Cheney. Cheney wanted him to pardon him fully, but Bush felt like he couldn't overrule the ruling of a jury.
Right.
So Bush left the ruling. He just commuted his sentence. Well, out of nowhere this week.
Literally nowhere.
Trump comes out and pardons him. So, but what's interesting is, one, Trump acknowledged in his official White House statement he's never met the guy. He has never met this person that he just up and pardoned. And he basically said, I heard he's been treated badly in the press, so I'm helping him out. And so we've lowered the threshold of presidential pardons to heard he had a bad time, which is awful for the country.
He committed a crime, so
it's
he probably has had a hard time.
That's such an awful threshold, and we could go on about Trump lowering democratic norms and all that, but we won't.
He's also somewhat, with all of the pardons that he's doing, he's kind of setting up, the precedent in his administration.
Right.
Which could lead to him, pardoning people who have actually been involved in the Russia investigation.
Well, that's what people are wondering, if this is kind of a message to people in the Russia investigation. People are going to indict possible people like Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, those people.
Yeah.
People are wondering, and we know from reporting that Trump's lawyers has dangled pardons in front of those people. Yeah. So this is not out of left field. Another thing I think is weird is Scooter Libby is a convicted leaker. And think of how ironic that is, because Trump really always rails against leaks and leakers, and it's dude, do you not get it? This man isn't a alleged leaker. He's a convicted leaker. A jury of his peers thought that his charges were severe enough and the evidence was proof enough that he was convicted of leaking. It just makes no sense. From a communication standpoint, it is totally the wrong message you want to send, because he always rails against leakers, but yet, I'm going to pardon a convicted leaker. It makes absolutely zero sense. It is bonkers. Nobody was even talking about Scooter Libby. He had left the consciousness
for over a decade.
Left the consciousness. Nobody was even on his radar, and
he was on no
it just speaks to the absurdity of the Donald Trump presidency. It really does. So
it really is. So
it just drove me bonkers. I was just reading and trying to figure out why in the world would Donald Trump pardon him. Except for the fact, I heard he had a bad time.
Yeah.
I heard they were treating him bad. What?
I don't know.
All right, I will.
Well, moving on to weird other Trump whatevers.
Please, take it.
So today it was announced that Rudy Giuliani, who was the former mayor of New York City and like stumped for Trump on the campaign trail and was kind of like floated as being part of the cabinet. I can't remember which position he was being. General. Yeah, as Attorney General, and he was he joined Trump's legal team, which like. What? First of all, but because Trump's legal team has kind of been floundering in the past couple of months, especially with respect to the Russia investigation that the Mueller probe. So then this is that weird part. Number one is why is Giuliani in this position? Weird part number two is Giuliani's statement where he basically he says that he hopes to quote negotiate an end to the Mueller probe. Like. What? Like, you don't negotiate an end to a criminal investigation unless you're engaging in other criminal behaviors that wouldn't necessarily, like, I don't think Mueller would participate in those behaviors, you know? So it's just, like, this weird language that he just kind of expects to negotiate an end to the process. And I don't know, from my perspective, the process of a criminal investigation is over when you either acquit the person completely or you find something to convict them with. So it's just this is the whole weird thing. Speaking of other lawyers, though, Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. Yeah. So Michael Cohen, if you'll remember, he's the guy who paid off Stormy Daniels, the porn star that Trump allegedly had an affair with right after Melania had Barron. It's a whole big thing. So he allegedly paid off Stormy Daniels from his own accounts right before the election in 2016. And then there was some non-disclosure agreement, but Trump never signed it, right? So there's this whole big mess. So Michael Cohen is Trump's personal lawyer, and there's this whole relationship there. I was learning the other day. It's a thing. So this week, Monday morning, their FBI raids his office, the hotel he's staying in, and his house to seize all of his documents. And I do mean all of them. And so then, Trump and Michael Cohen are Trump's all sorts of upset about this, first of all, because that means that these lawyers have access to a whole bunch of documentation.
Can I just say, too, Trump is calling this a witch hunt and bad for the country and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Attack on our nation. Can I just say, if a federal judge saw enough probable cause to issue a warrant, it's not a witch hunt.
The other thing to note about this, too, the fact that the team that seized all of these materials wasn't part of the Mueller probe. No. Mueller forwarded them some information that he felt wasn't completely underneath his umbrella of things that he was supposed to investigate, but he forwarded it onto a team in New York. He's functioning out of DC. He forwarded this to a team in New York to investigate more fully, and obviously a judge issued warrants. So then they were in court this week to assert attorney-client privilege and have the opportunity to go through the documents first before the federal investigators do. And a judge, so as part of that conversation, the first thing that happened was that a judge forced Michael Cohen to divulge his secret third client that he's been holding back for some reason, his third big client. He has lots of clients, but there were three big ones. One was Trump, two was the GOP GOP something chair. Oh, the RNC, you're right. Something chair. I don't remember what exactly he was. And then the third one, was judge secret. Yeah, the third one was secret, and the judge forced him to disclose. So he disclosed, and it's Sean Hannity, who
the Fox News host.
Yeah, the Fox News host. And then so that sends Hannity into this whole cycle of I never actually hired Cohen. He just advised me. He's not a client.
I never received an invoice. I just had casual conversations about legal issues with him.
Right.
And can I just chime in here? So Sean Hannity is coming out saying, Michael Cohen reveals under order from a judge that Sean Hannity is his client. You don't just flippantly say that. He was court ordered to reveal his clients.
Yeah, client, not guy I advise on occasion.
Not friend. Sean Hannity's over here saying, no, I'm not his client. But then Sean Hannity's, trying to argue for attorney-client privilege. for his documents with Michael Cohen. It's like, whoa, you can't have that both ways. He can't be your lawyer and also have an attorney-client privilege. Right. Like, that's not how it works, dude.
Right. So that doesn't make sense. And, like, the other thing that is with that... I just lost my train of thought. So... Sorry. Yeah, completely lost my train of thought. No, that's fine. So I guess we're moving off of the Hannity thing. So that's a whole big thing. Oh, it was that, like, it's kind of weird that the president's personal lawyer is also affiliated with one of the president's biggest backers, who often says some of the things that are most false. It's just, like, something that's, like, kind of,
And the Washington Post is reporting that Sean Hannity has a lot more influence with Trump than we previously thought. Some of the White House staffers call him, like, a chief of staff. Like, shadow chief of staff almost. Yeah. Like, he talks to Trump all the time. I even read a report that Trump will cut off cabinet members to talk to Sean Hannity. It's like...
That's concerning. Especially because he's, like, supposed to be the unbiased media. Which, I mean, we all know Fox News is biased because all news sources are biased. They just happen to be a little bit more conservatively biased than...
A little? Sean Hannity?
Shh. Trying to be...
I'm sorry, you're trying to be objective.
I am trying to be objective. Every news source has some bias. Fox just swings. I mean, and like that's true of CNN. True. That's true of NBC. That's true of everybody. And Fox just has a way of like skewing things in a way that they stop reporting all the facts, which is interesting. So there's that. That relationship kind of is not great. And then the other thing that came out of this meeting with the judge is that the judge said that Cohen and Trump's lawyers couldn't comb through the documents before to see what applied to attorney-client privilege. They were going to leave that up to the federal investigators. That he trusted these prosecutors to be able to do that effectively and without bias. So they were sorting them, and then they would decide which ones to read, which was the point. So.
All right, should we move on from that big old mess?
Oh my gosh, yes.
So this is on a more somber note. Former First Lady Barbara Bush died this week at the age of 92. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because just a few days they came out and said like she wasn't going to seek any more medical care. She was going to... Comfort care, whatever that is. And she was
basically keeping her comfortable until she dies.
And then, like, 2 days later, she died. And it was just so, like, drastic. And...
It's been a long time since we've lost either a president or a president's spouse.
Well, Nancy Reagan died in 2016.
Did she?
She did. So...
I do not remember that.
But I've always thought Barbara Bush was a fabulous lady. She was just always so down to earth. And just, she was also very blunt. Like, there have been so many great and wonderful tributes out there that I couldn't even do justice. So if you want, like, great tributes, go out there and read them. They're the Washington Post did a good one, New York Times. Like, there are lots of great tributes out there. But I think she was definitely had a place in American society and American political culture. I mean, she was the matriarch of the Bush family, which was a political dynasty for like the last...
She's only the second woman to have been a wife and a mother to a U.S. president.
Right. The only other one was Abigail Adams.
And Abigail Adams died before her son became president.
Oh, did she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she had such a big influence. She also did a ton of work with family literacy. She also was like... tried to break down the stigma around AIDS in like the early 90s, which I didn't know. Yeah. Which, if you know, like Princess Diana was also on that. Like during the early 90s, that was kind of a big thing. There was a huge stigma around AIDS.
Yep.
And so I didn't know she was also kind of involved in that. So I thought that was interesting. But her funeral is on Saturday, and a lot of high-profile people are going. So First Lady Melania Trump is going.
Okay.
Donald is not. They just put out a statement saying he didn't want to cause more security and more disruptions, which is valid. Like, the First Lady going, security. But if the President goes, like...
So much more security.
More security. So, it's valid. Like, there could be something to say about how the Bushes weren't supportive of him, blah, 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 blah. But I think that's a valid excuse. Bill and Hillary Clinton are going. Barack and Michelle Obama are going. Of course, both the Bushes are going to be there. So, like, this is going to be a big gathering of, like, former first ladies and presidents that we haven't seen since, like, the inauguration.
Yeah.
The Carters aren't going. Jimmy is traveling and Rosalind just had surgery. But, like, beyond that, we have all the former living presidents, both the Bushes, Clinton, and Obama. So, and those guys don't all get together very often. No, so this is a big deal.
I think the last time they did was for the Houston, for the charity thing, which is a big deal too. So the thing too that is really amazing is that Barbara and George H.W. were married for 73 years. Yeah, they got married young, and then they've been together ever since. It was really. The tribute from, I think it was on the Daily, that, like, talked about how, I don't remember who did it, but somebody talked about how, like, she kind of lost track of, like, the Bush family at some point. She wasn't paying attention to them. She only had eyes for her husband, and it was just, like, this really cute moment. Like, they really were, like, she was heard to say that, like, George gave her the best life that anyone could ever have. She was so, it was
They
really
had a
cute.
great relationship.
They had a really good relationship.
Also, I want to say one last thing. She was known to say very blunt things and be very open and honest. Mm-hmm. Like, when her husband became president, she famously said, "I'll do anything except change my hair, lose weight, and change my wardrobe." Yeah. She said, "I'll do anything else, but I won't do those things."
She, like, famously wore, like, really cheap pearls.
Fake pearls, yeah.
Fake pearls to
She was known for fake pearls. When Jeb was rumored to run in 2016, she said she was asked if he think he should run. She's like, "No, we've had enough Bushes." Like, she said that. Then, of course, when he decided to run, she supported him. But she was like, "We've had enough Bushes." But I think the best quote I've seen from her is at a graduation ceremony she spoke at. She was the commencement speaker at Wellesley College. Is that how you say it? The, like, all-girls college where Hillary Clinton graduated from.
I think it said Wellesley, yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it. But it was kind of a scandal. There was some controversy when they invited her because this college is, like, super liberal. It's all women, and they're all, like, super career-driven. And they were all up in a tizzy because she was a wife and a mother, and, like, she got her position because of her husband. Like, she wasn't a career woman, right?
Yeah.
And so there was some controversy about her speaking. But she got there, and she said, this is the best line I've heard from her. You know, she said, in effect, you know, even maybe out there, someone might be like me in the future, presiding over the White House as the president's spouse. Right? So she's like, somebody out there could be the president's spouse. And then she's like, and I wish him well. And there were just a big cheers, because she's alluding to a female president. And which is like, yeah, like, this was in 1990. Like, people didn't talk about having a female president in 1990. Like, we barely could talk about it in 2016. Like,
I know.
The fact that she joked about it in 1990 was kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
so
that is a big deal.
She was a great lady, and we definitely did not do her life justice. If you want more tributes, go read, because there's a lot of great ones out there.
Yeah, there are really good ones. Okay, moving to more somber but less patriotic topics. There have been some updates in Syria. So in the last 2 weeks, there was a chemical attack on some civilians in the northern part of Syria. And, like, chemical weapons are a big, big no-no. They're technically a weapon of mass destruction. And that was Obama's official, like, big red line. And last year, when there was a chemical weapons attack, we dropped a bunch of ordnance on an airport. And then, so this year, like, we had to figure out how to respond to this. And there was a coalition of people, like, especially notably Emmanuel Macron of France, who were like, we need to strike back. We need to do a coordinated bomb strike against Assad and with use of against his use of chemical weapons. So it ended up being, so this, like, was a conversation that took place over the space of, like, a week. And then last weekend, France, the UK, and the US Friday night dropped bombs on what were supposedly chemical weapons warehouses and facilities for making them. By that point, they'd been able to pull out, but it was a big thing. Like, Russia was super upset about it, and so was, of course, Syria, and there were a lot of people that were like, there's a lot to be said against military strikes like this, because they don't seem to deter anything from happening ever again, and also you end up, like, harming a lot of civilians. Like, it's hard to enforce the idea that you shouldn't be harming your civilians with chemical weapons by using a military action. That seems a little bit counterintuitive. and it really doesn't stop anything. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to be said for it, but we are taking action, I guess. The other thing that happened around this time is that Russia said that the UK were the ones who had perpetuated this chemical attack, because it wasn't immediately apparent. Like, there was some idea that it might be Israel, or that it might be whatever. So
accusing the UK of staging a chemical attack in Syria, I was like,
again,
are you serious? This is so absurd.
It's not just... So that was, like, they said that with the Skripal attack, with the nerve agent. But really, it's...
Which made sense because it was on their turf. Yeah. Like, okay, maybe I could see why they're arguing it. But, like, the UK staging an attack in Syria...
Right.
That just was bonkers to me.
It really, truly is. And, and obviously their justification for that bonkers story is that the UK is trying to draw attention away from the Brexit mess. But, you know, it's just a weird story at this point. So that's exciting. Right now... We don't know exactly how there'll be retaliations, but there will probably be retaliations from Assad and from Russia, because Russia's really heavily involved. So that's the update on Syria. Then this week it came out that over the Easter weekend, Mike Pompeo, who's currently serving as CIA director and in his confirmation hearings to become Secretary of State, visited North Korea to have preliminary talks before Trump meets with North Korea, which in some ways is kind of like head turning, because you don't expect the CIA director to do that, but in other ways, like, it makes sense, because before a president goes to meet with somebody for any sort of summit, usually you have months and months and months and months of talks with lower level leaders. We call this second track diplomacy, track 2 diplomacy, where you have low-level officials from both governments get together and talk and work through things and negotiate. So then when you get together and have a summit, then all you're really doing is signing your names.
More of a photo op.
It's more of a photo op. You're signing words to an agreement that's already been made, and then you don't have to worry about your leader having to negotiate and save face, and you don't get the best deal. So in some ways it makes sense that Pompeo went out there, and the other ways it's like...
I think a lot
he's not sex state yet.
Yeah, a lot of senators are like, he's trying to act... The biggest criticism was that he was acting like he was Secretary of State without actually being confirmed. Which, if you, like, against senators, that's a big no-no. Like, senators take their role to advise and consent on nominations, like, very seriously. So the fact that he's, like, usurping their constitutional authority and just, like, going and being the Secretary of State anyways is kind of alarming. But you could also argue from, like, the intelligence side.
There is some precedent.
There is some precedent for that, too. It's interesting. This is the highest level meeting between the U.S. and North Korea since Madeleine Albright went to North Korea in 2000, which was, like, huge.
Right.
She was Secretary of State. That's a cool story. Go read up on that if you're interested in diplomatic history.
Madeleine Albright is just
she's just cool all
amazing
around. Woman. I heard something interesting, though, I saw this clip from Morning Joe. This, like, I can't remember his name. He was, like, the retired NATO Supreme Commander.
Yeah, something like that.
He was, like, the head of NATO forces, right? And he said that Donald Trump is just expecting to, like, walk into this negotiating with Kim Jong-un, like, slap the table like it's a Manhattan deal, and then walk out with a win. Like, I don't think Donald Trump understands diplomacy.
No, he doesn't.
I don't think I'm going far off base saying that Trump doesn't understand how diplomacy works.
That's evidenced by the gutting of the State Department.
Right. And so he in a lot of reporting that I've seen, he's just expecting to, like, get in the room with Kim Jong-un and, like, arm wrestle his way to a deal and, like, negotiate and, like, walk out with this big flashy win. And all of us are like, that's not how it works. So
one of us
it's encouraging that people like Pompeo are going for that fact that there's groundwork and that there's actually talks going on and not just Trump blindly going in and thinking he can do it all. It's good in a sense that Pompeo is going for that reason.
Yeah, you're right. Yep, that is true. So I guess that's where we leave that. We'll see if Trump goes into North Korea thinking that will turn out well for him. So,
okay, let's go back to the soapbox. So this has to do with the Russia stuff. So on Face the Nation on Sunday, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley was on. She goes on the Sunday shows quite a bit. So it wasn't a big surprise. It's not like it was, Mattis, who, like, never does interviews. It was Nikki Haley. She's often a surrogate. She often does the administration line on the Sunday shows. So... But
not too extremely.
Right.
She's really good about balancing.
Right. She does it when it's necessary.
Being and still being a cabinet official.
Right. So she announced that the U.S. is putting new sanctions on Russia, and that Secretary Mnuchin was going to announce them on Monday. Right. And I was like, okay, great. Like, we like Russian sanctions. This is good. This is a good step. We kind of
expect this.
Yeah. And then, all of a sudden, come Sunday night, Monday morning, it comes out that the Trump administration is reversing course and is actually not going to put sanctions on Russia.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, Nikki Haley just said that. Like, it's not like she was lying or, like, making it up. Like, Nikki Haley doesn't do that. Like, yes, she's kind of carved out her own role as, like, independent, but I don't think she would go rogue, as people have been saying. Like, she's not going to go rogue and, like, make something up and, like, say something.
Yeah.
And so I think it was the Washington Post reported that Trump saw that interview and then started yelling at the TV, like, why did she get that? Why is she saying that? Like, he was yelling at her at the TV, and that's when he changed his mind. And the White House didn't tell Nikki Haley that they changed the policy. So, but the plot thickens. Mm-hmm. The plot thickens.
You're right.
So, economic advisor Larry Kudlow was asked... Who's new? He's only been on the job like a week or two. He is asked by reporters about it, and he says, "Oh, she was confused." Like,
I think Ambassador Haley was confused.
Yeah, It was a. I think he used the words momentary confusion. She had a bout of momentary confusion, and she, excuse me, she didn't know what was going on. Then Nikki Haley responds with a succinct one statement that says, "With all due respect, I don't get confused." Like, bam! Mic drop. Like, you tell him, girl, because and
clap back.
Yeah, like, you tell him. And I think it's so interesting that. One, Nikki Haley felt like she needed to defend herself. Like, had it been Tillerson, he wouldn't have said anything.
You're right.
Had it been, other members of the administration, they probably wouldn't have said anything. But Nikki Haley has definitely, like, carved herself out as, like, as a tough person. She's not afraid to speak her mind. And she's probably one of the only cabinet members who can do stuff like that and get away with it. If anyone else in the administration, like, if that was Jeff Sessions talking back to, like, a member of the administration, can you imagine, like, the backlash he would get?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that Nikki Haley has that role for herself. And it's part of the fact that she's at the UN, which is in New York, so she's a little bit removed from D.C. and, like, the craziness. But my soapbox is, you do not throw someone in your administration like that under the bus. You don't. Like, if you change your mind, you tell her. You don't let her go onto a show on TV, which we all know is very important to Trump. You don't let her go out there just to lie and say something and make her look like she doesn't know what's going on. Like, this is someone in your own administration.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry. I just, it really grinds my gears. Like, you don't do that to your own people. Like, if it was someone from the other party... fine, like, that, you can blame it on partisanship, you can blame it on tribalism, but, like, someone from your own team, someone that you hand-picked for this role, to go out there and defend your administration's policies, you don't throw them under the bus like that.
Yeah,
it is so unprofessional and so rude, and I hate it.
And sadly, it happens all too often in this administration. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think that, I don't know. You have this with so many of the cabinet officials that are usually now gone, honestly. But really, it really is like a game of, like, if I say this, is it still going to be true in 12 hours?
I know.
Like, you almost wonder if they'll stop speaking. And we're going to have a completely opaque government, which would also not be a good thing.
And it's like, what are our allies supposed to think? Like, I saw one report, I think it was by Politico, that said, like, foreign powers and foreign countries just, like, don't believe anything that they hear from the administration anymore.
Yeah, they don't.
Because it flip-flops. And, like, one, that's bad for allies, because, like, they're supposed to be on our side, but two, that's bad for adversaries, because they won't believe our threats are credible. If we say we're going to put on sanctions and then we reverse course, like,
well,
how are we supposed to have that tool of sanctions?
I think we've talked about this before, but the madman theory, where, like, you keep everybody off balance, then when you actually make a decision, like, they'll believe that, like, they will trust your threats enough, but that's not true necessarily. Like, your adversaries are gonna get to the point where you're so far off and you are so far volatile that they're not going to, like, if you say you're gonna use nukes, they're not gonna believe you. If you like that, there's a point where too much insanity is, like, too much madman theory is too much, where you just, like, you reach a point where you're no longer credible as a functioning human being, as a functioning administration. So you're right. It's really unprofessional, and it's really just like it's really frustrating for everyone who is a professional to watch this administration throw so many people, like, person after person after person, under the bus in a way that we've never experienced. You kind of expect that more from authoritarian and controlling regimes, and we're not one of those, and we don't want to be one of those. No. But Trump seems to think he's one.
It's so sad. Like, this is not what the United States does. This is not America. Like,
and we're getting desensitized to it.
It is, and it's sad. But, you know, what happened to the days of Ronald Reagan, where we were the shining city on the hill? You know, what happened to the days when, like, you know, when America had values and we, like, stood up for things,
or pretended to,
or at least we said we were going to,
right?
But, like, now we're just, like, throwing our own people under the bus, and it's like, how are we supposed to even do anything?
Right.
Like, what message does this send to Kim Jong-un? Like, how does he know he can believe anything Pompeo said?
He doesn't.
You know what I mean? Like, there were so many implications. Exactly what you mean. People are like, oh, that's just Trump being Trump. That's just Trump, you know.
We can't brush it off like that.
We can't, because it has implications that actually mean things. Like, with Kim Jong-un, anybody Trump sends now, there's always going to be that doubt in the back of his mind, or any other foreign leader that meets with any administration officials. I was going to be like, well, is this going to change in 12 hours?
Yeah. Can we make a deal with you? Will it last?
Yeah.
Because Trump did the same flip-flop thing with the TPP. Just in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, like, that was stupid.
Yeah, like, oh, maybe we'll rejoin the TPP. Maybe that's something that we should do.
Okay, wait, never mind.
That's not a thing. So, I mean, and it's going to be a hallmark of this administration. And
really
it's
is
frustrating, and we can't ever get desensitized to it, really. Because if we get desensitized to it, then it's going to set a precedent. This is how precedents are set for future presidents, and we can't afford that. So...
All right, I think I've
slapped enough things on
tables.
I've
pounded enough tables.
I'm sorry about your ears, because that hurt my ears.
Sorry. Yes, I think I've raised my voice enough, got enough blood boiling. I think we can end now.
Okay. All right, we'll see you all next week.